Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Algorithmic Diversity with Challenges of Zero Exclusion, AI, and Ethics. My name is Yonah Welker, and my work is focused on the future of learning, well-being, neurodiversity. My activities can be divided on several levels. First is research. I've been working to create long-term initiative in order to connect the dots between social studies and technology studies in order to empower works in fields of neurodiversity, ability, and non-binarity. At the same time, I'm actively involved in tech and venture worlds. In particular, I'm collect early stage startups related to diversity, learning, well-being, mental health, but also I serve as an entrepreneur in residence for such ecosystems like 500 startups, INSEAD, projects and initiative funded by European Commission. At the same time, I'm actively involved in projects related to ethics, what help us to better understand to implement social robots, VR, AR, different technologies for marginalized and underrepresented communities. In particular, I'm a peer and member of such initiatives and communities like All Tech is Human, Montreal AI Ethics, and this is a great inspiration for my work. At the same time, I'm trying to be very active in terms of from the bottom innovation. Recently, I'm joined Women in AI, and we will work on expansion, but more importantly, the hackathon with the mission Zero Exclusion. So you're all very welcome. So today's discussion is dedicated to algorithmic diversity, the challenges of zero exclusion, AI, and ethics. And it will be kind of a in-depth exploration of a previous year we spent working with accessibility technology, in particular AI, robotics, different deep tech companies, startups, but also academic research in this field. My goal is to present current challenges, but also actions we're able to make based on all explorations I've made, both from technology and venture world, but also policy making, ethics, guidelines perspective. I hope that all of the listeners of this speaking uh, will learn not only some knowledge, but also um, will be able to being involved in new initiatives, projects, will find call to actions for technology related to disability, neurodiversity, marginalized communities. There are so many opportunities to collaborate across the regions, ecosystems, and verticals. So let's start. Typically, when people not related to accessibility or inclusion fields reach me, they ask me, why, Yona, you're so depressive and pessimistic regarding trends in this area. Just look, Microsoft and Amazon just implemented accessibility programs for hearing impaired people. We have accessibility projects, initiatives, or look at Google Glass. They collaborate with autism-focused startup. So it seems like there's a collaboration between technology world and corporates, or looking other tech companies and unicorns. They introduce and collaborate with companies focused on neurodiverse hiring, helping people with autism to find a job in technology, occupations, engineering, data science. There's also schools experimenting with social robots for ADHD, AI trainers for dyslexia. And finally, just look at this. NGC from Canada, she's a musician, experiment with biofeedback and imagination to control modular synthesizers. We could use such technology for neurodiversity. For sure, we have a significant progress in terms of technology, in terms of capital. We're potentially able to invest in this field. We're also some first guidelines and frameworks in this field. But unfortunately, all of these dots are still dispersed. They're still not connected. And typically, I tend to present at least two levels of problems. First is the social level. And it means that 90% of people with autism are not employed. One of 10 of people with disabilities who have a need in inclusive technology have no access to it. So in most cases, we're still not able to connect all of these dots. We're not able to deliver these promises. But more importantly, we also have a significant technology challenges and ethics challenges as a new level of problems we have. Just recently, I've collaborated with the European Commission funded project. It's called Shop for CF, and it's focused on smart factories in Europe. And we came up with a program focused on more ethical use of AI, human-centered technology, and robotics. And I would love to state just a few problems we have today in AI ethics. It's also stated by many of my peers from Alan Turing Institute, Montreal AI Ethics Institute, Winnie AI, and many other organizations. First of all, is an algorithmic bias. So no matter if Amazon or Google try to implement inclusive technology, we still fail to make it ethically. Amazon facial recognition for jobs doesn't work correctly. Webcams can't recognize people of color. They're not so efficient in terms of a women face. 30% of cases are errors, and it's just a kind of a peak of iceberg. It's not even the whole statistic we have, but even this piece is just tremendously bad. Or another problem is a black box problem. Even though we try to implement social robots in schools, we still not able to explain and come up with a really clear interface that are clear for all stakeholders. And for instance, we have cases when AI-driven platform fire teachers, but we're not able to explain why. And just imagine what we try to implement such technologies for kids with autism, dyslexia, and so on. Or another problem is the supremacy of algorithms. Or another title of this problem is a double check principle. In 1967, there was a case that old man died after surgery. But it didn't happen just after surgery, but after 18 days after. So just after the surgery, doctors decided the surgery was successful, and this became the beginning of respirators development. So something similar happened in AI. When we use technology without double principle and we will make decision, for instance, student performance too quickly without double check by someone else, human, expert, ethics board, we fire someone, we exclude someone. And in the end, we create not equal situation, and all of our work driven by technology just useless. Or another case is a situation of filter bubble or echo chamber. Typically, we tend to think about this problem mostly from informational or media perspective, but at the same time, when we deal with the learning technology, when we build adaptive learning technology at schools, it's the same situation. We put kids into a filter bubble or echo chamber of particular decisions. It doesn't mean that this technology is bad, but once again, it requires much more efforts and attention in order to make it flexible. And another problem is the technical fixes. If we go to the companies like Facebook or many companies who use the similar ethics principle, they tend to use so-called technical fixes in order to solve the problems. It means that, for instance, if we have a facial recognition bias or misinformation on our platform, we just came up with another feature driven by AI in order to solve the previous one. For instance, just recently, Facebook used um, feature would help them to identify bugs automatically using algorithms. And just imagine that they try to fix something which are not broken, and otherwise not fixing something would actually create troubles for people or severe harm. And unfortunately, we create a pyramid of technical fixes which just amplify the problems. And finally, a significant problem we have today is a privacy and surveillance. Cameras, social media, apps, platforms, all of these things created and actively used by children, young people, but we still have no clear policies. Yes, we have a GDPR in Europe, we have a CCPA in California, but it's still very limited in terms of a social robots, smart toys, and things focused on young people. For instance, just recently, UNICEF came up with a framework that called AI and Children. It was published in 2020. There's also a project called Generation AI, driven by World Economic Forum. But at the same time, policies and guidelines related to children, they still extremely limited. So in most cases, even if you work on dyslexia startup or autism robot, you're extremely limited in ability to understand the game's rules. And that's why we have biases and problems, not only in terms of unicorns, but also even in terms of passionate teams who try to create something, but they just don't have correct policies and guidelines. And another thing is a problem of the autonomous agents. Typically, when we talk about autonomous agents, we tend to think about cars, Tesla cars, or something like that. But today we face much more cases related to autonomous robots, educational technology, in different type of things we implement in well-being, health, hospitals, schools, education agencies, and we have no policies, we have no correct understanding how to deal with such technology. So today, I would love to talk about steps and potential actions we are able to make as a technologist, as a policymakers, as a people related to ethics, creation of guidelines, and many other agents related to our field. First of all, and one of the biggest things I believe that should be fixed in technology world is a representation. Recently I became a part of Women in AI. And it's not just because I'm passionate about women, but also it's just one of the extreme cases of a problem we have. For instance, in AI, there's just a 30% of efforts presented by women, and basically in STEM there is no more than 15% of women. In data science teams we have a very similar numbers. And if we try to go to other type of minorities, marginalized or underrepresented groups, neurodiverse people, or disabled people, they're extremely underrepresented in workforce. So what does it mean? There is a very good phrase shared on World Economic Forum, and basically it was about AI is either silver bullet for any kind of problems we have, or is it source of apocalypses, and it's really depend who and how ask questions. So until we have a representations of people who create annotations, data labels, ask questions during the research, we're not able to solve problems related to bias, facial recognition, computer vision, autonomous agents, and so on. Other problem and other step we should actively implement is a collaborative AI in data. If we talk about mental health or neurodiversity, all of the apps or platforms associated with such challenges and problems require a significant amount of validated data sets, for instance, related to MRI scans of brain, for instance, in order to teach machine to make correct analysis and conclusion. And for instance, if we go to a mental health niche, we explore, but until today, in most cases, we believe that the core problem behind mental health issues and depression is a serotonin, but now is about serotonin, dopamine, NMDA, and many other neurotransmitters. Is about involvement, particular tumors. So we have more and more data and parameters we need to take into account in order to predict particular conditions, provide people with a personalized treatment, and so on. And that's why, for instance, in terms of neurodiversity, we have a rise and we're working on several levels of solutions. First of all, is the open employment and diversity data and statistics, for instance, about representation of particular type of people and social groups and workforce, like disabled people, people of color, a particular cultural or ethnic group, neurodiverse or autistic people. So it helps us to better understand how different type of companies, organizations, or corporates or unicorns perform in order to actual diversity, in order to come out with better solutions. Second is the open mental and general well-being data related to, as I mentioned before, MRI, different type of healthcare data would help startups come up with better solutions, because in most cases startups not able to get access to laboratories, hospitals to make a quality user research or get a data about particular conditions. So where we have open source platforms or movement focused on particular type of data, we're able to help new companies or innovators to solve this gap. And finally, is a neurodiversity and neuroeconomic data is specifically useful when we work with the social robots, when we need to come up with the scenarios and different gamification approaches in order to build this technology. Once again, is another significant field to work on. The next thing, and specifically related to hardware and robotics companies in neurodiversity and zero exclusion, as I call it, field, is a tendency to evolve neurodiversity and well-being companies into learning companies. For instance, recently I had opportunity to deal with companies and startups implementing AI for dyslexia at schools and educational agencies. Also, I had opportunity to talk and had a conversation with startups and teams creating social robots for autism, ADHD, and similar conditions. And in most cases, one of the challenges they face is an inability to implement their solutions due to bureaucracy, lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, or just a lack of time and resources. So in the end, most of them tend to position themselves not just as the developers of the hardware or robot or social or emotional AI, but as a learning companies who create in-box solution with a curriculum, with the whole cycle of work, how exactly to implement with robot, how to use the social robot to interact with the kids with the less cognitive ability, more, I would say, mental health problems or anger. So how exactly we should use it. So we came up with the whole spectrum of use cases in order to simplify integration using principle don't make me think. For sure, it requires much more time, resources, and from teams involved in development of these technologies. But unfortunately, we just have no another choice in which how we act in order to empower integration and adoption of such technologies. Other thing, and this is significantly important, is a rise of AI ethics and collaboration between technology and social science. I deal with the enormous amount of cases related to people of color, marginalized groups, communities related to Asia, Africa, or immigrants. In most cases, we just have no cultural background and cultural knowledge in order to come up with the adequate criteria in order to create particular technology. So that's why if when we discuss facial recognition bias in similar problems, it's not only about representation, though it's a significant problem, but also just completely lack of understanding who we deal with. We never spend any efforts, investments in order to build a cultural foundation of studies and cultural, cognitive, gender, and in many other areas in order to better understand it, because there is a difference how we deal. There's a difference in statistic related to autistic black people, women. There's a differences, and we should create the foundation, open source, educational, academic world research related to this field would help technology people come up with better solutions. So on one hand is about hiring people related to social science, ethics, in the implementation, but also is about the whole culture of AI ethics movement. And hopefully, it's not only growing but becoming decentralized. There is as I mentioned before in the beginning of my talk, is a Canada AI Ethics Institute in Montreal, is All Tech is Human, is a Alan Turing Institute, and many other organizations with not only involved in the applied science and research, but they actually try to democratize with movement. And you're able to openly find and download guidelines, would help developers, stakeholders, business owners to come up with a fair and more transparent approach to technology development, implementation of AI, both in neurodiverse or assistive technology or beyond. But it's just the beginning, because unfortunately, while we have all of these tools, we have all of these open source resources, we still, for instance, have adequate representation of this knowledge in curriculums of startups, accelerators, in incubators, in technology ecosystems. So for instance, I'm a part of 500 startups. I'm collaborate with ecosystems like SeedStars, Techstars, and we still lack enough attention to this topic. Just recently, such ecosystems start to think about ESG, social responsibility, and impact, but it's still just at the beginning of this movement. We still have no enough talk and practical implementation of the AI ethics metric and guidelines. For instance, recently I had opportunity to judge funded by European Commission initiative related to EdTech, and we had a criteria related to AI ethics, data privacy, human-centered design, and with how we evaluate startup and as a criteria which matters in the same degree as a, for instance, your sustainable product or a business model or a talented team. But unfortunately, we still have no the same level of attention in our technology ecosystems. Another thing, when we are able to decentralize this knowledge, is a creation what I call zero exclusion organization. And uh, my peers from women in AI in other organizations, we try to come up with a vision how zero exclusion ecosystems and organizations should look like. The big problems we had no cultural changes in recent years, even though we had talked about disability inclusion, AI ethics framework. We still have a representation issues. All our workflow management in teams are still monopolized with the same type of a people, with the same type of a social groups. We still use inclusion techniques instead of zero exclusion. So we just try to fit some people into existing mechanism without trying to build it from the scratch, decentralizing this model, decentralizing the management. Typically, currently, there are several principles we consider. Then we deal with teams when we deal with rising companies or technology companies in order to implement this zero exclusion. First of all, is a principle of algorithmic diversity in technology. So we interpolate design thinking of principle one fits one against one fits all to technology development, to algorithm development. Second, we tend to use micro decentralized teams to align with particular groups in order to come up with the accurate data labeling, annotations, user research to better understand cognitive, cultural, or gender differences. We came up with hiring social and ethics professionals, as I mentioned before, cultural, ethnic, gender, cognitive research. All of this knowledge is crucial in order to align criteria in technology. Another thing is a creation of a cultural an accessible moral vocabulary. I believe we're not able to evolve organizations and teams until we create a synthesis of a technology and bioethics and human rights. There are very good examples of ethical frameworks you're able to find even openly, created by Alan Turing Institute, by Deloitte, even companies like BMW, they came up with own frameworks. So you're able to find them, to adopt them, but more importantly, just your goal is not just to hire some AI ethics people who try to solve your bureaucracy in vertical. You already seen this case in Google. Then one of the best minds in AI ethics was fired after she explored some problems related to ethical and responsible use of technology. So in the end, our goal is to come in with the agents of change, agents of the ethical vocabulary framework and development. So all of the team members related to design, development, engineering, management, business, marketing, all of these people are aware and able to develop and deliver all of these principles in practical, not just being kind of a passive agents who just checked by AI ethics professional. And other things is accountability, because in most cases, when we deal with the technology, we are trying to be focused on our bad or good actions, but very often we forget about not actions, so-called omissions, when we not interrupt some actions to prevent harm. Specifically, it related to children. Specifically, related to women. When we need to uh, limit ability to harassment, cyberbullying, to protect this type of communities. As I mentioned before, until UNICEF came up with the framework for children, until just a pretty limited amount of research institutes like AI Now or AI Ethics in the UK came up with the frameworks and guidelines for disability. We almost had no any guidelines in this field, and we should come up with the frameworks with equally think about accountability as an element which includes both doings and not doings. When we're able to help people to get access, but also we prevent some actions which can harm vulnerable communities or our users. And another thing is a transparency. As I mentioned before, we still have a significant problems in order to better understand and provide all of the stakeholders with interpretation, with the correct language. Just recently, I had a very good talk with the AI ethics professional, but also she's an artist. She's a from she has a African roots, and we talk about what type of a language of communication we need to have in order to talk with different stakeholders, sometimes with governors, in order to present particular problems or better understand results presented by technology. Unfortunately, we still have no good frameworks and guidelines related how to deal with social and emotional robots in education, nursing, healthcare, how to combine human involvement, how to combine in a double check principle in order to avoid supremacy of algorithms. So there are many criteria we need to take into account. And another thing is the impact. Unfortunately, we still have no collaboration between people who are involved in social innovation, impact measurement in technology. And for instance, I had opportunity to evaluate different toolkits related to impact. Very often they too academic, and that's why, for instance, people from technology world don't really love them. But we should use impact assessment tools specifically. For instance, there is a stakeholder impact assessment toolkit would help us to assess our positive or negative impact on all of the stages, on all of the phases of development, including formulation, pre-implementation, and reassessment. But still, I believe all of these methods should be improved. And final things I would love to mention is technical fixes, because in most cases we still have in mind that all of the problems should be fixed through another technology. But sometimes we just need to hire ethics professionals, social scientists, spend a better research. For instance, I deal with significant amount of startups. I'm volunteer for INSEAD. I work with 500 startups, and one of the problem I face in most cases is that early stage companies ignore user research. They use a limited amount of methods. We're not able to make it in quality way, or we're not able to deal with a different type of measurement, quantitative, qualitative measurement of attitude, and in the end, we're not able to fix particular problems, not due to the technology, not due to the facial recognition problem, but due to the people behind it, due to the lack of research, due to the lack of knowledge and correct criteria. And final thing I would love to mention, and it's specifically related to my recent involvement in women in AI. I'm a huge believer in going from the bottom innovation, I spend a significant amount of time collaborating with the ecosystems like MIT in Middle East and Africa, Lebanon, um, and I face so great talent over during hackathons. As a young people, and even in completely different regions, even if we talk about U.S. or Middle East, all the young people think about inclusion, fair approach to workplace, learning, and they come up with many ideas and many prototypes related to social robots, AI, professionals, well-being, collaborative learning, and many other solutions. So hackathons become decentralized ecosystems which provide us with a new generation of talent, with new ideas, kind of pre-funnel for acceleration programs, incubators, venture funds, different type of institutions, agencies, innovation ecosystems. We just pick this talent and solve the huge gap we have today in technology, because unfortunately sometimes even talented people with who are MIT alumni who get some support, we're still not able to promote disability or accessibility technology due to the dispersion and complete disconnection of this market. One of the teams we focused on social robots I had opportunity to talk with. He said, we don't consider competitors as a competitors and is a problem due to the fact that our market is so empty. We still have just a few people like venture capitalists or innovation ecosystems who truly involved in this area. So we need more people, more agents who involved in this field in order to bring awareness, to involve more families, agencies, schools, people who could drive and further. And that's why, for instance, just recently, one of my peers came up with a platform focused on venture investments in autism. Just recently, what was created in Vanderbilt Center focused on innovation and technology in autism. But still just the beginning, we still lack of a connection between research, academia. We have all of the elements, but they're disconnected. Academia people live in the academia world, researchers in one world, technologists, venture capitalists, they're completely disconnected. So in most cases, sometimes people like me just should connect these people in order to solve particular problems related to visual or hearing impairment, neurodiversity, physical disabilities, and different challenges which marginalized and underrepresented communities face every day, even though we don't see it because we're too busy, because we have our own problems, and unfortunately, it's how it happens on a regular basis. I would like to say thank you to everyone who had opportunity to listen to this talk. It's not easy job for me because I don't have weekends. I have no celebration. There's nothing to celebrate. We still have significant troubles, and we should connect all of the dots. I work on a daily basis to involve more people. So if you're a researcher, innovator, venture capitalist, technologist, you're really focused on future of learning, well-being, mental health, neurodiversity, disability, zero exclusion, philosophy, in actual reimagining of our ecosystems, schools, institution, which actually never change their mindset and during the whole century, even though we have a completely new economy, we have a decentralization, we have a blockchain, we have a social robots, but mentality, it's still the same. So if you're really on the same mission, I'm always happy to connect. Thank you so much again. Stay safe and stay healthy.